Hi, friends, and a very pleasant good day. Welcome to 15241 Today Talk. And Jim Render and I have a great guest for you. This is going to be a great show. This gentleman, Rich Donnelly, has been a friend of mine for 35 years. We've traveled a lot of miles together, particularly during the years when Jimmy Leland was managing the Pittsburgh Pirates. Rich Donnelly is an outstanding racquetball player. And also, Tom Friend wrote a story about Rich Donnelly and his family, which is going to become a movie. And we'll talk to Rich about all of that in a moment. Rich making the trip all the way over from Steubenville, Ohio. And so I guess you two guys from Ohio, you've gotten a chance to know one another, right?
Well, Lanny, thank you. And it's an honor to be here with two Pittsburgh legends. I know all about Jim. I got the great pleasure of meeting him about a month ago. And of course, we worked together for all those years with the Bucks.
And you walked in today with your big red mask on. Steubenville has been a special place in your heart, hasn't it?
Yeah, I grew up. I know Coach has been down to our stadium. I grew up actually in the end zone of our stadium, and I was ball boy for Steubenville Big Red back in the early '50s. And actually, my dad was athletic director at Steubenville Central, but I always wanted to go to Big Red. So, as fate would have it, we had 8 children, and 5 of them ended up going to Big Red. And now I'm a Big Red nut. I go to all the practices. I'm great friends with Reno Suckoch, the head coach there, who's been there for 38 years, and through him I got the great pleasure of meeting Coach.
And then you went you went to Steubenville Catholic.
Correct.
And then to Xavier.
Yeah, I went to Xavier with my good friend Dan Abramowitz. Dan was a wide receiver at Steubenville Central and talked me into going to Xavier. And Danny ended up being all-pro and playing 9 years in the NFL. So he was my idol. And I tell people all the time, it's neat to have your idol be your best friend. And Danny was, and still is to this day.
Does he live in Steubenville?
He lives in New Orleans now. He moved back to New Orleans. Danny is a legend down there. And Coach, he was the last guy drafted. I don't know what they call that guy. There's a name for him. But he was the last guy drafted in the NFL. And, Coach, they cut him. Tom Fears cut him, and he walked into Coach. He says, Coach, you didn't give me a chance. He said, you can't cut me. I'm not going home. And he talked him into giving him a chance. He said, okay, I'll give you a chance in this game. We're playing the 49ers. Danny caught 11 passes, 3 TDs, and the rest is history. 9 years in the NFL, he made all-pro. So Danny was my idol growing up.
Well, you started in pro ball in 1967. You were a minor league player, but there wasn't much chance for you to make the major leagues?
Well,
yes?
I ended up, Lanny, playing 2 years at AAA. And in 1971, they called me and my other catcher, Rick Stelmazik, into a room. And my manager, Del Wilbur, says, that phone's going to ring, and one of you guys is going to the big leagues. So, we're sweating bullets. Like, one of us is going, and we felt bad because we were good friends. And, of course, they called and picked him. And I got upset about it. In fact, I went to spring training the previous year, and I played under Ted Williams. And he's the one that picked my buddy instead of me. So I got mad at him. So they come in to play an exhibition game in Denver, and I threw out 2 players, and I yelled over something at the dugout, not very nice, toward him. And I went home and told my wife, I'm done. I just cussed out Ted Williams. And I thought, my career's over. And the next spring, I go to spring training, and they said, Rich, you're only 24, but we'd like you to be a manager. And I said, where'd you come up with that one? They said, Ted Williams recommended you. They said, anybody to talk back to him, why he liked. And so I started managing when I was 25 years old, and that was the start of my career in coaching.
And a long career, either managing in the minor leagues or coaching in the major leagues. I know both of us feel very fortunate that Jim Leland's been a part of our lives.
Yeah, I hooked up with Jim. It's funny. I knew Jim before I got to the big leagues. We managed against one another in spring training. He was with the Tigers in Lakeland, and I was with the Rangers in Plant City. We played each other every day, so we talked a lot. Then during the season, one year I managed Denver, and then I managed Wichita, and Evansville was in the league, and that's where Jim was managing. So we managed against one another. Then when Jim got the job here in Pittsburgh, '86, I called him and I flew out to San Diego for an interview. I interviewed with the late Sid Thrift, our buddy, and he hired me. And I've been blessed to hook up with Jim and be with him for 14 or 15 years.
We were talking earlier about off the air about that 1992 team. Pretty painful season for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We knew we had the best team. We had the best player that I've ever seen, Barry Bonds. We had the second best player, Andy Van Slyke. We had the Cy Young winner, Doug Drabek. We had 4 or 5 Gold Glovers in the infield and outfield. Van Slyke, Chico Lynn, Mike LaValliere, Jay Bell, the whole bunch. And then we had the best manager in baseball. And sometimes, as coach knows, the best team doesn't always win. And we knew we were the best team. For 3 years, we were the NL East champions and won the pennant by a large margin every year. And then we got in that playoff with Atlanta, and I think everybody in Pittsburgh knows the story there.
Again, we were talking off the air. I've always been amazed at how much criticism there's been of Barry Bonds and the throw from left field. But to me, the critical point of the game was the ground ball that Jose Lean didn't field.
Yeah, Chico, I think he made 4 or 5 errors the whole year, and he was a Gold Glove winner. And it happens. He had a routine ground ball. And if he catches the ball, there's 2 outs and nobody on base, and he missed the ball, and the umpire missed a couple of calls, and all of a sudden, they're down to their last player, Francisco Cabrera, and he comes up off Stan Belinda and gets a base hit into left field, and it broke the hearts of everybody in the tri-state area.
Jim, you want to talk a little bit about the book? You've read it.
Well,
I have not.
to the people watching this program, I certainly recommend you read this book, The Chicken Runs at Midnight. It's about Rich and his family. It's an amazing book. High points in baseball, and then some tragic points about his family and his daughter Amy. So Rich, they're going to make a movie about this book. Could you go ahead and fill us in about The Chicken Runs at Midnight?
Yeah, it all started in the spring of '92, Lanny. We were down there in Bradenton having, we've got a good team. We're going to win it. And I get a call from my daughter Amy in Arlington, Texas. She says, Dad, she said, I have something to tell you. Don't be mad, but I have a brain tumor. And I didn't know what to do. That here she is apologizing to her dad for getting a brain tumor. So a week later, they had to have surgery. The tumor was behind her eye. I flew down to Arlington. Jim was great. He says, take as long as you want. And they had the operation, and when the operation was over, my wife Peggy, Amy's mom, they called us in a room, and I knew this wasn't going to be good. And he started telling me about the tumor, that they couldn't get parts of it, and I said, stop. Tell me straight up. And he said, Rich, she has 9 months to live. And when he told me that, if you've ever felt insignificant in your life or feel about that big, that's the way I felt. I was mad at everything. I said, why her? Why not me? 17 years old in the prime of her life. And so she stayed in Dallas, in the Children's Hospital there. And during the summer, well, she told me, she says, Dad, you go back to Pittsburgh and win that pennant and get in the World Series. So I go back to Pittsburgh, and during the year, Jim and I would call her, and Jim said, hey, Amy, he says, if we get into playoffs, we are going to get into playoffs, you're going to fly up here for a game. And Amy was thrilled. So I had a friend that had a private plane, and he flew Amy and her friend Cindy up here. So they flew up, and Lanny, you'll remember this distinctly, the 5th game of the playoffs. We were down 3-2 in games. Bob Walk was pitching, and Amy and her friend Cindy were there, and we won that game and got the chance to go back to Atlanta to play. And anyway, we're driving home in the car, and Amy's going to leave from the airport the next day, and all of a sudden she reaches up grabs my neck, and she said, Dad, she says, when you have a guy on second and you cup your hands like this, she says, what are you telling those guys? That chicken runs at midnight or what? And I'm going, what the heck is that? And all my kids are going, what the heck? Where'd you come up with that one? And she goes, I don't know. It just came out. And everybody was laughing. So we thought about it. Amy went back to Texas. And, you know, we, as a family, we communicated by letters back then, not Twitter or phones or anything else. And every letter we signed was CRAM, Chicken Runs at Midnight, or if we were on the phone, we said, I love you, Chicken Runs at Midnight, became our family motto. Well, now, 5 years, or that year, Amy passed away. Actually, it was January of '93. And we chose to put that saying, Chicken Runs at Midnight, on her tombstone. And again, it became our family motto throughout, you know, our life. And so 4 or 5 years later, Jim gets a job in Miami. We moved down there to Florida, and never thinking we're going to ever have a team like we had in Pittsburgh. And lo and behold, we have a pretty good team, wild card. We get into playoffs. And during that summer, we acquired a second baseman named Craig Counsell. And if you look at Counts, he's now the manager of the Brewers. Counts used to hit with his arms up in the air and flap his left arm. And my sons, Tim and Mike, they were the bat boys, and they called him a chicken man because he flapped his arm like a chicken. And I never thought anything of it. They say, hey, the chicken wants to take some batting practice. I go, who's the chicken? They go, Counsell. I go, okay. But I never called him a chicken, you know. I always just said, hey, Counts or Craig, or, you know. So here we go, and lo and behold, we get in the World Series. And here we go, we're playing the Indians. And we had just played the Braves and the Giants. We were underdogs, and we won. So now we're in the series, and we're underdogs again. Now we go to the 7th game of the World Series. And there were 70,000 people at Pro Player Stadium. And I'm telling you what, it's an out-of-body experience to just be there. You try to spit, there's nothing there. It's just, you're numb. You're saying, geez, all those times when I was little and watched the Dodgers and Yankees in the World Series, and now you're in one. And I'm coaching third. We go to the 11th inning. Craig Counsell gets on third base. Edgar Renteria gets a base hit. We win the World Series. We're the world champions. Jim is running around the stadium. I'm running out after him. I don't even know where I'm at. It's an out-of-body experience. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to find Tim or Mike, my sons, and I'm looking all over for him. And all of a sudden, I see Tim, and he's screaming. He's crying. And he runs up to me. I said, what are you crying about? What's wrong with you? We just won. He said, Dad, look at the clock. I said, what are you talking about? He said, look at the clock behind you, the stadium clock. It was a couple minutes after midnight. He said, Dad, the chicken ran at midnight. And I just fell to my knees. I said, oh my God, Craig Counsell, the chicken, scored the winning run at midnight. It was like, this isn't happening to me. This can't happen. Whatever she said 5 years ago, her dream was for me to win a World Series. It happened. And since that day, the story's been out. Like Coach said, we've done a book on it, and the producers of Duck Dynasty called me about 3 months ago, and they saw the book and saw the piece on ESPN, and she said, we got to do this movie. It's got to be a movie. It's an unbelievable story. So we're getting prepared to do that.
That is phenomenal. That Counsell scores at midnight.
Yeah. That's what's so great about the story. Something that meant nothing turns into something who meant everything. And why she said it, I don't know. How it worked out, I don't know. It's just a miracle. I didn't believe in miracles. I was brought up a Catholic and used to hear about the miracles back in the day. And you said, really? You scratch your head, and then it happens to you, and you go, oh my God, there are miracles that did happen. So I'm a miracle believer now.
Mm. Let me try to lighten the atmosphere a little bit by who plays you? Tom Cruise?
Oh, I don't know.
George Clooney?
I don't know. I got a couple jerks from Steubenville. I said they would have no problem finding one down there. So, but I don't know what they're going to do there. The first thing they told me, Lanny, is they do a script. And once they do the script, then they have characters in the script, and then they go pick somebody to play me, play Amy, play her brothers, and all that stuff. So I don't. That's way out. I told the producer. Her name is Deidre Gurney. She's an Emmy Award winner for Duck Dynasty. She also did the movie Fast and Furious. I said, Deidre, I said, I feel like I'm a brown pair of shoes and you guys are a tuxedo. This is way out of my league. So I'm just laying back and going to watch and see what happens.
Rich, in the book, it talks about how you've been invited to speak on the book and Amy and your career. Do you still do a lot of speaking?
I do a lot. I've done a lot here in Pittsburgh. I did one last year with Ferguson Jenkins and Dickie Knowles up in Philadelphia. It was great. My old guys I coached. But I try to tell them, it's like in my book, that I tell them about my childhood. I tell them about the failings that I had as a father. I tell it, and as a husband. And I tell them that everybody has something. Everybody has something in their life that they have to deal with. And I found in my life, my faith has helped me, my wife and Amy and my kids. And then my other son, Michael, he was Amy's brother. He was killed about 2 years ago in Texas, saving a girl's life on a highway. He pushed her out of the way of a car and he got hit. My other two daughters, Leanne and Tiffany, were at the Las Vegas concert when they had the shooting a couple years ago. The bullet went between them and hit a girl in front of them, and my two daughters could have ran, and they didn't. They laid down on top of the girl, put a tourniquet around her. She got shot in the face, stopped the bleeding, saved her life. So in the book, I try to tell them that, you know, your kids are supposed to learn from you, but in my family, it's reversed. I've learned from my kids, and anything I could pass on to anybody to help them, well, that's what I try to do in my talks.
The girl that got shot in Las Vegas, she lived and she...
Yeah, Natalie Grumman, she's had about 8 operations, and she calls me all the time and says, Rich, what possessed your daughters to stay with me? There were bullets flying, nobody knew what was going on, and your two daughters risked their life to save mine. And she just says, I can't believe that. And I say, well, don't give me no credit. That comes from their mom, who taught them the right way to be. And I think the greatest sacrifice you could have in this life, and my kids have done it twice, is to give your life to save someone else's. So again, I've learned everything from my children, and that's what I'm so grateful for.
Well, I've known you a long time, and you're minimizing the importance that you've played in the lives of your children. And as I hear you talk about this, I can't help but think about the fact that those of us that were part of the Pirates during those years it was a family. We all cared about each other. That the fact that your sons could be a part of the team and be in the clubhouse, that's invaluable stuff.
Well, Lanny, I always tell people I've had 52 years. I'm with Coach now. We're retired, we think. And the best times of my life, my wife Roberta always says, those times in Pittsburgh were great. And we were like family. You know, the old Pirates of the 79, we are family. Well, that's what we were.
Yeah.
And we didn't acquire a bunch of free agents. We had a couple trades here and there, but most of our guys came from the Pirates, and we did everything together. We did everything together in the clubhouse. We did everything together off the field, and it was a true family. And those days are the most memorable days of my career.
Yeah, normally teams celebrate championships. I'd love it if sometime the Pirates would bring back the guys from the early 90s. Great to see all of them. Tell them about the story when you broke the table in San Diego.
I knew you'd bring that up. Well, Jim and I, Jim went golfing every day, and he'd take the staff with him. We always played golf because he said, I have to get my mind off the game. I got to go. And he'd be smoking his cigarettes and everything, and we'd go play golf. And I think the one day he smoked 36 cigarettes. He smoked 2 on every hole. So we're playing out in San Diego one time, and I stayed with Jim. Jim had a suite, and then in the middle was a dining room. Then I stayed over here in the bedroom because he got robbed one time in Chicago. So he was scared. So he told Greg Johnson, our traveling secretary, put Rich with me. So I was the gatekeeper. So I locked the doors and made sure, and I ordered the pizza and the coffee. So we go play golf. We come back, and I played terrible. So Jim always had the clubs come up to the room because Jim would hit balls and putt and all that. So he went to take a nap, and I got my driver out. And they had these big curtains in San Diego. And I said, I wonder if I hit one hard, if it goes into that curtain, it'd be okay? So I go whack, and I'm hitting it whack. And all of a sudden, I hook one. And my club hit this table. This glass table was about this thick. And all of a chunk came off, and Jim woke up, what the heck's that? And I go, oh, I think I hit a chip off the table. He says, Chip, look at that chunk. This chunk was enormous. It was like an iceberg. So we called the guys downstairs. It took about 8 guys to come up to pick this table up and take it out. And he said, oh, my God. And I asked the guy, I said, how much is that table? He says, oh, about $4 or $5 grand. Don't worry about it. So thank God I put it on my homeowner's insurance, and it paid for everything. But we tell that story all the time. And I have to have Jim to tell it because no one would believe that. But, yeah, that was among other things we have done, that was one of the memorable ones.
Yeah, in Houston, Jimmy used to hit golf balls out of the hotel suite because across from the Galleria in Houston was an empty field.
Yeah.
Right?
23rd floor. Jim went up there one day, and he's mad, and he's swinging his club. And he went, hey, Rich, he says, go over and open up them drapes and pull them drapes out and open that window. He says, you think I could hit one out through and out into that parking lot across the street? It was dark. It was like midnight. He went whack, whack. And I went, yep, they're out, yep. So the next night, Van Slyke finds out about it. He said, wait a minute, I heard you hit golf balls out of the 23rd floor. He said, yeah. Jim says, well, Andy, he says, I'm losing all these balls. Why don't you go down there on that field? Rich will stand on the porch. He'll yell, 4, and you just look for the balls. So we got our Gold Glove outfielder at 12:30 at night down there on this empty field, and Jim's whacking golf balls out, and Andy's going, I got it, I'll bring him up. So we had one ball. It hit up top and it went down, and they had a wedding party, and it hit on top of the wedding on the limousine, but that's the only damage we caused.
And then Montreal, we used to bet on the races in Montreal.
Yep. Order the pizza, and Jim would get mad because the guy never cut the pizza. Did you ever get a round pizza and it's not cut? You can't cut it with a knife, your knife. So he would call back and tell, I forget what guy's name was, Rocco or somebody. He said, Rocco, cut the darn pizza. And then we would watch the races from Woodbine that they were replays, but we didn't know the results. So we'd all pick a horse, put a buck in, and bet on every race, had a ball.
Yeah, these things were 7 o'clock live.
And then
11 o'clock, we'd watch them at night.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, was we couldn't, the announcer was in French.
Yeah.
So we had no clue we had to wait till the numbers came up.
We had to watch the numbers, yeah.
Did you ever discuss baseball in the...
No. I tell stories all the time about Jim. Jim's a genius. He should be. I think he will be elected in the Hall of Fame shortly. He was amazing. He managed, and you appreciate this, Coach, he managed every game the night before. He knew he had lineups. He'd say, and then he'd throw a cigarette over here, and throw a cigarette. He had a pile of cigarettes and ashes. But he knew in the 8th inning, if we had Mike Diaz, that he was going to face John Franco. And he would keep Mike Diaz, our pinch hitter, he'd keep him for the 8th or 9th inning. And his matchups from 7, 8, 9 were incredible. They were on target every time. One night, I was the bullpen coach in New York. We had 2 guys warming up. And he said, well, get up Bob Patterson. I goes, well, we got 2 guys. He said, well, get 3 up. Well, you can't get 3 up. You got 2 mounds and a guy throwing sideways. And he called down, and he goes, is Patterson ready? I goes, Harry, the guard is ready. Everybody's ready. So Jim was unbelievable, but most prepared manager I've ever seen in my life. And the results are in the wash.
And we were talking about family before. Aren't too many people that care about their friends as deeply as Jim cares about his friends.
Oh, one of the big things, and all these kids that I talk to now about jobs and everything, I said, for Jim, if I could think of one thing for the way he managed, loyalty. You loyal to him, he'll be loyal to you. He's done so much for me, for other coaches, and I tell these young managers now, you want to get a job, you be loyal to the man who hired you. You be loyal to the head coach. You be loyal to the general manager. You be loyal. And if it's old-fashioned, it still works. And that's the way Jim was. Jim spent years and years, we know, with the Tigers organization, working his way up, being loyal, and then he got the chance to come here and became one of the greatest managers in baseball history.
I've not been around Jim as much as you guys, obviously, but I've certainly enjoyed the time I have spent with him. And I sometimes think he enjoyed talking to me. You know, a little bit of coach on coach rather than.
Well, I've been privy to those conversations, by the way, and just for the record, I've been amazed as well that Jim Leland spends as much time quizzing him about coaching people and coaching men, because it's an ongoing learning process for Jim.
Yeah, we've spent hours talking with Bob Huggins, with with Bob Knight, any coach in another sport, Urban Meyer. Jim likes to pick their brain and see what makes them tick, to see how they handled their situations, and then they in turn they quiz Jim and ask him. Like they said, well, how'd you handle Barry Bonds? He said, did you hang around with him? He said, no, I didn't go to dinner with him. He says, but from 7:30 to 10:30 every night, I loved him, and I just put his name in the lineup and let him play. And then I remember one night we were talking to George Karl. George is from Pittsburgh, I believe, and he coached in the NBA. He was a great coach at North Carolina, or player at North Carolina. And Jim was asking him, how do you handle these guys? So they exchange ideas, and that's what good coaches do.
I thought it was interesting. Barry Bonds has gotten some bad publicity about the way he treated people and whatever, but he was very nice to Amy. They were friends.
Yeah, they were.
And
one night she was late coming out. I got mad at her. I said, where were you? She goes, I was talking with Barry. I said, Barry? She said, yeah, he was telling us that when I grow up, don't hang around ball players. Go marry somebody else. So Barry had a soft side. You're right, Coach.
That came out in the book.
And Barry, the thing I want to say about Barry, of all the things you could say about him, I think the thing Jim's most proud of, and I'm most proud that I coached him, that first column, it says G, games played. And if you look at G, games played, Barry Bonds, 162, 161, 162, he played every game. And that was because of Jim Leland. Jim told him, if you want to be a Hall of Famer, you got to play every day. Whether you got a headache, whether it's a lefty, whether it's a righty, you got to play every day. And Barry Bonds played every day, and he played hard.
The chicken runs at midnight. When the premiere, you anticipate the premiere is going to be in Steubenville with searchlights and all that?
I don't know about that. When I read the contract, the last page of the 17-page contract said, we will pay for you and your wife to come to the premiere in Hollywood, and I got chills. I said, this is surreal. I mean, this is something you hear about on TV, blah, 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 and now it's going to happen maybe to you. And I just hope that they put I know Deidre Gurney's going to do a great job with this story and put it on the screen. And I told her, hurry up, I'm 74. I ain't got much time left. I want to see this. And when I'm sitting there watching it, it'll be the highlight of my life.
The time we have left, you're a national racquetball champion. You really love that sport, don't you?
I do. I play 5 days a week. I've played in Pittsburgh against my buddies up here. I go up to Newcastle a lot and play, and it's just something that it was a sport born for me. The Lord gave me pretty good hands, Coach. I'd have been a good receiver, Coach. I got good hands and good reactions, and like I say, I try to play 5 or 6 days a week, and it's a great sport because there's no excuses. It's you.
I noticed that you're a little bow-legged.
Yes.
My experience is that whenever I had a bow-legged player, they were pretty fast and good.
Yeah, I don't know what the Lord made me that way, and people make fun of me, but I say I'm so glad that I am, because on the racquetball court, it helps you get lower, it helps you be quicker, and like you say, you watch these wide receivers on TV in the NFL, they're all bow-legged, and I said, so what? That's a plus, and so, but I think it helps me a lot.
Well, Rich Donnelly, Jim and I are extremely pleased that you made the trip all the way from Steubenville, Ohio, to join us. As I said at the outset, you're a dear friend, and what your family's endured has been inspirational for a lot of people, and let's hope that the good Lord continues to bless you and the memory of your family and of your children. Thank you for joining
Lanny.
us.
It's been an honor to be with you two guys. Believe it or not, you two guys are my heroes.
Oh,
You are. You're legends in Pittsburgh, and I know all the people in the tri-state agree with me.
Thank you, sir. Rich Donnelly, former Pirate coach, Major League coach for many years, minor league manager. And the story, again, is called The Chicken Runs at Midnight. Watch for it. The book has already been out, written by Tom Friend. The movie may be out in several years. Thank you for joining us for 15241 Today Talk.